Hello and welcome to this exclusive interview granted the Cameroon Radio Television by the country's current ambassador to Japan. But here is in a different capacity as an author of a book which talks about the relationship between Cameroon and the United States of America. The book, simply entitled The Cameroon-United States Couple, will be launched publicly on December 20 this month here in Yaoundé at the International Relations Institute of Cameroon. But before that, let's have a preview of the publication with the author, Ambassador Pierre NDZENGUE. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
It's a pleasure, my dear.
As I just indicated in my introduction, you are the country's current ambassador, Cameroon ambassador to Japan.
That's correct.
Under normal circumstances, people should expect that you write a book about the relationship between Cameroon and the United States and Japan. But you have decided to write a book on the close golden age relations between Cameroon and the United States of America. Why is your focus and interest about the line between Washington and Yaoundé?
The reason is very simple. Number one, from 1990 through 1997, I've been a Washington, D.C. based diplomat as the first counselor. Number two, after leaving Washington, D.C. in 1997, I come to Cameroon to be the first ever director for American and Caribbean Affairs in the Ministry of External Relations. So in a nutshell, what I'm talking about is something I witnessed myself. Part of the history, I'm talking about here is what I witnessed myself. This is why I decided to write, about this relationship.
This is not your first publication. It should be your fourth publication. I've read the other books you have written. The current book, The Cameroon United States Couple, is a publication containing 411 pages, spread in 18 chapters of 5 parts, containing roughly 12,330 words. What do you want to give the audience to understand about Cameroon-US relations in particular?
Well, I think it's important to mention the fact that U.S. has been our first, partner when Cameroon became independent in 1960. In fact, as a matter of fact, the relationship started in 1957. Therefore, when you witness this relationship from 1960 to 2021, there is a lot to talk about. And a lot of people don't know. So it's very important to give the reader, my reader, a clear picture of this relationship. What are the factors underlying this relationship? Explain the results and try to see how the Cameroon embassy in Washington, D.C. could be part of this relationship.
While reading your book, I came to understand and to dispel one fact which is in the public mind, that no U.S. Secretary of State, that is Minister of Foreign Affairs of the United States, has been in Cameroon. That is not correct, because from the 18th to the 19th of February,
that's correct,
1970, the then U.S. Secretary of State, William Roger,
correct,
was in Cameroon.
That's correct.
Apart from such historical elements that you want to put to the market for people to understand, what are the key factors that bind the relationship between Cameroon and the United States?
The key factors is development of Cameroon. Because when you take, for example, what I call Temps des Amours, the relationship was based
on the love era.
Yeah.
The romance era.
Exactly, on, the development of Cameroon. As a young state in the international arena, it was important for Cameroon to find how, the means to develop its country. Is why you will see that the first agreement signed between Cameroon and U.S. are on economic development.
Economic development. And what currently do you think the United States has done to Cameroon in terms of economic development over the past 60 years that you want to benchmark them and for people to see that this is U.S. assistance to the country?
You have a lot of things, you know. If you take, for example, Reggie Faircam, people don't know that it was financed by the U.S. government at that time.
That is a railway company.
Railway company, exactly. That the first agreement, one of the first agreement was on railroad company in Cameroon. You take, for example, agriculture. U.S. has done a lot, you know, as far as agriculture is concerned. Take, for example, University of Chang. The agreement was signed, you know, to develop the University of Chang based on agriculture. So U.S. has done a lot, and people should know. That's number one. Number two, when we come to the, I would say, the difficult years about human rights, about, you know,
democracy.
Yeah, democracy.
Transparency.
Exactly.
Elections.
Exactly. So those are key, you know, points in U.S. relationship. And what is very important to understand here is that the U.S. has never been, you know, an enemy of Cameroon. No. The U.S. would not send the Marines to come and overthrow our head of state. No way. There is one major element in the Cameroon relationship is the well-being of the Cameroonian people. And this well-being can be achieved through economic development or through security.
You are arguing somewhere that there is need for Yaoundé to have a Washington policy.
Exactly.
In our diplomatic apparatus, passing through the President of the Republic, passing through the Ministry of External Relations, passing through the diplomatic division of the presidency, today headed by a technical advisor who equally doubles as the head of the division. Do you think that with all that diplomatic logistic arsenal, we don't have a clear, direct policy of Washington?
You know what? Let me tell you something. I was surprised to hear some U.S. ambassador here in Yaoundé telling me that apart from Bakassi, apart from the
Iraq fire.
Yeah, apart from Bakassi, apart from PTA agreement, they don't know anything about what Cameroonian is looking for them. So I asked myself, this is not serious at all, because we should have what I call a road map. Yes, we have what I call, you know, structure that conduct our diplomacy, but we need to have a roadmap. My colleague back in Washington, D.C. should know that this is what my government is expecting from me. As a Cameroonian ambassador to Japan, I should know that this is what my government is expecting from Japan. As far as our national strategy, development strategy is concerned, this is my point. So it's very important. Yes, we have those structures you listed, but do we have a Washington, you know, a U.S. policy that would guide us through, you know, I mean, 3 or 4 years or 50 years, I don't know. But my point is we need a road map.
And in that road map in which we clearly need to define our interests, what we are looking for, because this was clearly exposed during what they call the Anglophone crisis, because when they were asking for people who were creating troubles based in the
That's
US
correct.
to be repatriated, it's only when we realized that there is no judicial cooperation between Cameroon and the United States, and so no legal action could have been taken on both sides of the coin. What role can our embassy in Washington play in enabling that as somebody who has been in that office?
You know, the embassy will play the role the government wants wants the embassy to play. Is why I say roadmap. Because let's take, for example, the Nozo, you know, crisis. Okay, my colleague in Washington could be instructed to get in touch with the U.S. Department of State to single out those Cameroonian financing, you know, the war in Nozo. This is what I expect the government to do. And the government is already doing that, because we know that the U.S. government has already decided to arrest, you know, those Cameroonian financing, you know, the war in Nozo. So what I'm trying to say is that it's very important for any ambassador to have a clear picture of what the government wants him to do.
Finally, in your book, I noticed that there is a great material on the role of President Biya in redefining the diplomatic cables between Cameroon and the United States of America, what you call the inspirator.
That's correct.
How different are the BIA years of Cameroon-US relations to those of Amadou Ahidjo? How unique, how has President Biya inspired that relationship?
You know, you are giving me the opportunity, Charles, to say something very important here. Even you take the former head of state, President Ahidjo, and you take President Biya, they all inspirator of our diplomacy. There is one time in history where the Prime Minister was equally Minister of Foreign Affairs. That was before the creation, before our first government. But after, you know, Okala was nominated Minister of Foreign Affairs, former Prime Minister, you know, Ahidjo ceased to be Minister of Foreign Affairs. So the president is the inspirator, the fundamental inspirator of our diplomacy. And he will always be that because he's the one who defined our policy. He's the one who say, okay, if you take, for example, you know, the Iraq war, he was on the front of giving instruction to our ambassador. He was not the one applying those instructions. He gave, you know, he cleared the road, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the Minister of External Relations, our ambassador, will follow. So he is the inspirator, the fundamental inspirator of our diplomacy, and it will always be like that.
Before, and one episode of Cameroon-US relations was in 1986. President Biya was in Washington and towards many other US cities. By the way, the first foreign distinction, academic distinction, Dr. Honoris Causa of President Biya was given in the United States at Maryland University.
That's correct.
If I'm not wrong. President Biya delivered a speech. Anyway, everything started in French, and at one moment he just stopped and told President Reagan that, look, Cameroon is the best place for US investors on planet Earth because they don't need any translators. Because if they want to speak in English, they speak in English. If they want to speak in French, we have all those advantages. How has President Biya used that in international fora, especially with our relationship with the US, to make sure that US investors come here? I know that we have signed an investment treaty with them, bilateral investment treaty.
You know, as I said, Charles, President Biya is the one who guides us, who lead the road. Now, he's a very strategic person, and he knows. And the clear example I have in mind, I remember what you are talking about, but the clear example I have in mind is, you know, during the Iraq war. It was very clear that the position President Biya has at that time was no war, you know, a peaceful settlement. So when he went to Washington, some, you know, chancellors thought that, well,
on the eve of the launch of the U.S. invasion of Iraq.
Exactly. And some people thought, oh, he was being used by the U.S. No, it was not that. President Biya was straightforward with our ambassador, peace, you know, he's late now, Ambassador Martin Ebutu, who was our head of mission in New York at that time.
Martin Belinga Ebutu.
Martin Belinga Ebutu, thank you. It was clear. The instruction was no war. Cameroon will, you know, be with a peaceful settlement, will sustain a peaceful settlement with Iraq. But President Bush has already decided to go to war, and there was nothing President Biya could have done for that.
And to be pragmatic and realistic.
Exactly.
Okay. What message will you like your readers to retain after reading this publication?
It's very important for us to know that the world is changing, and there is need for a different type of diplomacy. That's my most important message here.
A diplomacy of emergence.
Exactly.
And with that, we conclude the interview. Cameroon's ambassador to Japan and author of Le Couple Cameroun États-Unis, histoire des relations diplomatiques de 1960 à 2021 et la nécessité d'une nouvelle ingénierie diplomatique du Cameroon. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us and for making us to have a copy of the book before time. Thank you very much indeed, Your Excellency.
You are very welcome, my dear Charles.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Your Excellency.